This is the Hella Creative Archive, where we explore the creative processes of hella creative people. I'm Sly Watts. Welcome to the Hella Creative Podcast, where we explore the processes of hella creative people. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Tell us who you are and how are you hella creative?
So, I'm Irene. I am a dancer. I'm a designer, graphic designer, set designer, floral designer. I'm a writer. I feel like I'm leaving something out, but we'll just go with those for now.
So I know that you really have a deep appreciation for decorum and a background in design.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about how some of your creative process is guided by design principles and ornamentation.
So I was never formally trained in design. As far as graphic design, I taught myself that over since 2019 and just was doing it more and more. And as far as spatial design, I've always had an eye for how things should go, or always had an affinity of things that look nice, and it's really just it's really vibes. It's oh, let me put this here. Okay, look at it. All right, no, that's off. So thinking about, I really enjoy playing with space and negative space, colors, textures. I always like to create a feeling based on just putting pieces together. As a child, I watched a lot of That's So Raven, and I really wanted to be a fashion designer and had an affinity for clothes and stuff like that. But then I was I'm not strong at illustration, and that discouraged me for many years because I felt I couldn't be a designer because I couldn't draw, or my drawings be giving 5th grade. So it really goes off of vibes for me about not seeing something and then seeing how can I fill up this space, or how can I add to this space.
Yeah. So there's no rule book you're going by.
No.
Right. I resonate with that a lot in my practice. I think a lot of the coolest stuff we do is a moment where we broke the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that when you're in it, you're not really conscious of how you're doing it all the time.
Yeah.
You're just
there's
just doing it.
I'm in the point of my life now where I'm finding names for the creative and artistic things I've always been doing. Ever since I could remember, I would always have a visualization of how a song would be of a music video. And I didn't know until now, oh, that's a treatment. I would think about treatments, since childhood, or now I'm taking a florist exam, and because Louisiana is the only state that you have to take an exam to be a florist. So studying that and learning design principles, the words for design principles and color theory, which just putting a name, a label to things that I was innately doing. So I think that's kind of been the cool part of it. In my process is figuring out what it is that I'm doing, and oh, there's a name for that. It's not just me having imagination. It's that, but it's more to it too.
So when you're going through that process, mm-hmm. and just kind of in your flow, talk a bit about how the challenges have shown up when you're trying to translate that as an instructor.
For what? For what medium?
Any medium, whether you're performing or like designing, or if it's in any realm of like research, or kind of in any bag you're in. Like, I know that you also have lots of history with just education, and so I'm just interested in like how do you relate that to people?
So I've always like, since like little Irene has been like the matter of fact ass like kid, like the actually, but then I've also was able to cultivate that into like guiding people towards knowledge and like building a bridge. And really it's like my excitement for the things that I know and wanting to share that excitement with other people, also allow them to be aware of it as well. For me, like a lot of my instruction background was in dance. I started being a dance teacher when I was 11 and was doing it like throughout high school in early adulthood, in some capacity being like some type of coach to people younger than me, or even people like the same age as me. And I've always tried to approach it as, it took a while for me to get there, but as like I still have a lot to learn, although I'm leading the group or I might be the one giving instruction, I'm still creating an environment where I'm learning from whoever I'm teaching.
I like that a lot, because it makes it an ongoing process.
Yeah, like I see myself as a forever student. Like I'm never done learning anything, and that's like, I also hyperfixate on things, so I like to go really like into know everything it is to know about one thing or another thing. Because that's where, for me, that's where the fun is. I love to learn new things. I love to like share and also showcase it as well.
When you're going between either instruction or like creating, like do you gravitate towards one another more or less?
I feel like it's been a bit of both, because there's been times where I've had to create while I'm instructing, like having to think about choreography while I'm teaching it. I do prefer to kind of be like in the creative process and be like a student more, because I'm not like entering into the adult aspect of my artistry and being like a big girl artist. I still feel and also because I'm self-taught in a lot of things, I am very much like, I don't have all the answers. So I want to learn from people. I'm gonna still do what innately comes to me, but I'm always curious about how can I build on top of that and bring in maybe some more formal instruction or knowledge to that to elevate whatever it is I'm doing.
So it sounds like you spent a lot of time playing
Yeah.
before you buckled down and said, okay, let me learn certain fundamentals so that I could go even further with what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, I think that for me happened when I started getting paid to be a graphic designer, and I had like a lot of imposter syndrome about it because I'm not an illustrator and I didn't go to design school, and I couldn't retell you the principles of design off memory. But then it was like, well, now it's a little bit more formal and it's a little bit more on the line, and I naturally, because I am a performer, I'm like, all right, I gotta prepare, so I gotta like show and put my best foot forward. And that gave me the ingenuity to like, all right, how can I take this like a step further?
I want to switch gears for a moment because we talk a lot about your creative life, and I want to dig a lot into your study, and especially your anthropological study, and if you could talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
just like the extent and like what interests you, and how does that connect with like your creative work?
Yeah. I love a noun. I love people, places, and things. Like I love investigating how people are in the place and the things that they do across various times, especially with Black people. I'm so interested of like the Black existence globally, but micro focusing it on America and really New Orleans. Right now, I'm writing a book, a historical fiction novel that's set in New Orleans, and the way I already knew that I wanted to write a book before I started writing this book, but what led me to writing it was I was reading a lot of dissertations about New Orleans and about just the Black experience in New Orleans from like predating America up until now. I'm very interested in the antebellum period, like the period after slavery, but before like the civil rights era, because it was such like an in-between type of time, and very like investigative about that. Yeah, it's really curiosity for place and why things are the way they are, and not being from New Orleans, but then being exposed to New Orleans and living in New Orleans. It's a place that has so much historical depth that I feel like I just sink my teeth into all of like the history, because there's so much even just orally or even like recorded, or you can just walk around the city looking at the buildings and see the history there, and that it inspired me to write, and it also like inspired me to tell the story or amplify the story of the people that made this place so special and continue to make this place so special. So that's where it comes from.
What's been like the major difference in researching and like investigating it, kind of like from anecdotes and like just information that you find, as opposed to like living it and observing culture in real time?
I think so looking in research is very limited, because when you're reading dissertations and theses and stuff like that, is people in academia writing about like a certain thing. So you're not really, and they're trying to prove a point. So you're kind of not really getting the whole story all the time. And also, Black people have a oral tradition, and that's how stories were passed on, because for a long time we were revoked of the right, or discouraged from reading and writing. So the stories were held in song, in dance, in tradition, in costuming, in storytelling. So I have been opening up my awareness more to those as teachers and as research, as opposed to just focusing on like, is this a heavily researched topic? Because what I'm writing about isn't heavily researched, and like that's how I'm like, oh, I need to find out more about this, because this is something that's not being talked about. Living here, it's interesting because I kind of see like how, I'll read something about how, like for instance, New Orleans had in the 1940s a lot of Black insurance companies. Like that's how a lot of like Black people made a lot of money, and it was like strong and funded. A lot of the social aid and pleasure clubs was from like these insurance and also funeral companies. And then now, like seeing that reality and that kind of like difference in what businesses and things look like now, but then also seeing the similarities in the festiveness, or in the ornamental, costume is not the right word, but ornamental like clothing, like in Mardi Gras Indians and baby dolls and stuff like that.
So I'm gonna ask a confrontational question.
Yes.
Because we did mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Morally, you know, because you're not from here,
Mm-hmm.
and you're telling a story about this space,
Mm-hmm.
what have been some of your internal conflicts navigating that dynamic just as you write the story?
First, it's like having the awareness that New Orleans is a place that has been extracted so much over centuries. Financially, ecologically, culturally, and I don't want to contribute to that, which I'm handling like this process with a lot of tenderness and care, because I don't want to, although I'm like writing about the past, I don't want to romanticize it and be like, oh, everything was just all good. And also being cognizant that this is still a place that people are very proud of to share this story. And the things that I'm writing about, or as I'm talking to more people around here, they are like, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't know about this. So it's not me coming and like, I'm gonna tell you your history. It's also like the character in my book is loosely based off of my own maternal lineage, and also my story of like coming into this place as a young woman, and just like my experience. So it's also based on my experience, and I am handling it with a lot of care, which is why like the research is so extensive, because I want to make sure I get it right. And I know even when I write it and publish it and all of that, it's still gonna be some people that's like, well, this and well that, and like that's just gonna be what it is. But I know that my intention is not to be extractive, and is to just add a patch to the quilt, you know, that is New Orleans and the story of New Orleans.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. I want to talk about the writing process a little bit further, because you mentioned it, like a lot of it's not actually writing. Could you share some of like how that's gone so far, and like the way research and like living have prepared you to like just get the story together, and like what's it like being in community with writers, or like just trying to figure that out yourself?
I took a storytelling class in October of 2022, a community storytelling class led by my beloved Mama Denise, and she was a 7th generation Creole, Treme born and raised, and learning from her and learning about the art of oral storytelling and being griot, the West African tradition of storytelling, has really informed my work, because I'm thinking of the way that I'm like writing it. I'm thinking of how is somebody going to consume it, like what's the consumer experience of it. And I don't want it to just be like, oh, this is all this like textual information mixed in with some drama, but what does it even sound like? What do the people talk like? Like that's a big thing. Like I'm writing about a time that I didn't live in, so it's like I have to listen to media and talk to people who were talking those words. I'm also like learning Louisiana Creole little by little, but trying to implement that to enrich the story that I'm telling. It's really about like an immersion in the culture. I live in the 7th ward, so like walking a few weeks ago, I went to Vogue Croissants. I feel like I'm butchering that name. That's a double entendre because they're meat butchers, but they are meat butchers and they make a sausage company. They make sausages now, but they started in in the 1890s, and they've been in the Seventh Ward ever since. So talking to Mr. Vance and learning about what that history was for his family, and how they sold meat to Black people in the Creoles in the Seventh Ward for a century, and just being out, just living really has informed a lot of my writing, has inspired me, and also made me change the story a little bit. So yeah. It's an ever continuous process, because I'm still tweaking the story, the overarching story, as I'm living more.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of the process is in community.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which feels like the opposite of writing.
Yeah. I think to your point about writing from a place that I'm not from, or a culture that I'm not really part of, I had to. It would be different if I just sat in the corner and was okay, I'm gonna write about what I think this looked like or this was, which I did at first. But then I had to compare it to what happened, and what's actually happening, and would this even happen at this time? Would they say that? Would they wear that? Would they eat that? And yeah, that does happen from living, and life has been my biggest teacher on that too. So
yeah, it's we have no idea just the nuance of this culture.
mm-hmm.
As a people, inside and outside.
Yeah.
And it's until you live that experience that you realize how ignorant a lot of people sound about New Orleans.
Yeah.
Which is smoke for a whole nother day. Just don't go on Twitter, yeah. I have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think you aim to see your process evolve into as a creative person?
I want it to be I see it evolving into really over-encompassing my life. It's my life. I mean, it's starting to get there a little bit, but at some point, I want my just everyday living to be a part of my creative process, and to live in that prayerfulness and intention to create, just doing mundane things. I guess that's romanticizing my life, but I'm a writer, so of course I would do that. But that's how I see it, living treating every day it's an art project, or it's a project, and approaching it like that, approaching life with an artistic lens, because I'm an artist, some people can't. They just gotta, regular rat race, and I don't want to do that. So that's what I see.
And where can the people find you, and where can they support your multiple businesses?
Yes. So you can support my floral business at Sea Spirit Blooms on Instagram, and seaspiritblooms.com on the website if you want to link me for any floral and foliage things. My Instagram is at Miss Irene, and I is spelled like I. And yeah, my book coming soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay.
Give it up for yourself.
We did it.
You know, is emasculating, gravitating and captivating like negative energy. Track the greatest in a pack of nation, bigger give synergy over it. Positive vibes and smolder it in our essence for free. Cancel madness with the vibes and kill it benevolently. And evidently we give autumn leaves to the winter's tree. The bohemians living minds with freedoms from belittlement, self-balanced and light and high through the medium. Discipline and control undid the hinge on the shoulder like truth. And so now I'm high on life, this adventure I stroll so unusual through the world. Time and I truly quarrel, my mind is to root this world in this tree of life designed to close feudal flows. The school ain't teach this, but this